Hey everybody, we're going to be going over the second passage of the Cram on Saturday right now. So this is about the historical details of movies. Question number 12 is a sentence combination question. We know these. We're always looking for an overlapping phrase. If we look closely here, we're going to see that overlapping phrase with some filmmakers and other filmmakers over here. This is kind of wordy. If we look at A, we're going to replace other filmmakers with others. It's operating as a pronoun, and it's pretty clear that others refers to other filmmakers, so this is going to be all good. And A is nice and concise in general, whereas the other answer choices are less concise overall. If we take a look at number 13, we're looking for a second example that supports the point. So the first example we have, right, is that Henry Louis Gates Jr., who's this important historical consultant, he's also a Harvard scholar of African American literature, very important guy. If you take a look here, we're talking about two things that he did in the role of historical consultant. So first of all, he vetted the script of 12 Years a Slave, which was a film about African American history. And now we have this word and we're looking for a second example. So we want the second example to really show that he is a historical consultant on film, right? Which is the main point the writer is making here. So A looks maybe a little bit off here, right? It's about history, but it's not specifically about film, right? The Hutchins Center for African and African American Research is just about his scholarship in general. So I'd put my symbol here next to A, probably not right. Even wrote the film's concluding credits about the mystery surrounding Northup's disappearance in 1857. Well, in the context of the passage, we know that the mystery of Northup's disappearance in 1857 is a historical detail, right? So we like B because it's about what Henry Louis Gates Jr. does for the film and what it has to do with history. So it looks pretty good. If I look at C, this is about literature and culture, not the same thing as history. It's also not about film. And if we look at D, played a large role in discovering and disseminating the earliest novels. Again, this is about literature. It's not about history, even if those are old novels. So the best answer here for 13 is going to be B. Let's take a look at number 14. We're looking to set up the example discussed in the paragraph. So again, kind of like the poor man's strategy for all these questions is to just focus on keywords in the question stem. So we want to find out before we do anything, what is the example discussed in this paragraph? Here we're talking about master and commander. We've mentioned it before. And one of the things that's interesting, if you read this carefully, is that the director wanted to emphasize camaraderie. Camaraderie means like friendship, right, of the ship's officers. And, you know, if we get ahead to number 15, to number 16, this means he had to kind of do away with the historical period's formal social protocol. So basically, in history, people were very formal. It means they weren't like high-fiving each other and, partying together beneath the deck of the ship or whatever the movie depicts. But the director wanted to show them being, fast friends, having a lot of camaraderie. So how are we going to introduce this example, which kind of shows the tension between wanting to create a good film and wanting to create a historically accurate film? So if I take a look here, A says, while historical integrity is important, notice this transitional word, some directors spend too much time worrying about it. I mean, I really don't like A just because of how informal and critical it kind of sounds, but we'll leave it around for now. Many actors struggle with the balance between historically accurate and conveying emotion. What I don't like about this is it's about actors, right? And we're not talking about the difficulties of acting in a historical film, but rather being a filmmaker or a director. So again, with B, I don't love it. C, audiences, get rid of it right away. We're definitely not talking about audiences. D, other concerns may take precedence, which means other concerns besides historical accuracy may become more important. And here, the other concern here is like the character development of the camaraderie. So that's 14. Number 15, this is a simple verb tense question, guys. A lot of times we see these questions that are really subject-verb agreement dressed up as verb tense questions, but this is not subject-verb agreement. We're talking about a historical consultant, okay? Obviously, it's not going to be A. We're not saying that the consultant will say, because Master and Commander, they've already established earlier in the passage, it's a 2003 movie, so it's quite old. And we know that we have to be using the past. In addition, because we have other verbs that are in the past surrounding it, remember for verb tense, we're always looking for time references and other verbs that are not underlined because we know they're correct. So therefore, we're going to go ahead and choose the past tense, B. Some of you guys might have thought about C. Why can't it be right? Well, it's just super, super awkward, guys. No need for us to use this complicated, like past perfect base verb tense here. Let's take a look at number 16. This is a vocab question, but unlike vocab meaning questions, it's about tone or register. So this really comes down to how formal or informal. So we're talking about how the director wanted to emphasize camaraderie, right? And therefore the director did away with the historical truth that people were super formal back then. So dumping obviously is going to be wrong. That's like a very slang term. Ditching, similar. Scrapping, similar. Disregarding, that's nice. It's not super, super weirdly formal, but it's a good kind of like academic tone. Right? So look out. If we're lucky, we're going to see 3 informal words like we did here. Sometimes there's also a trap where there's going to be one that sounds smart, but it's really awkward and unnecessarily like highfalutin. Number 17 here. This is kind of a challenging question, but there's kind of a trick to it. And I don't know if the test designed it this way, but like this is a quotation, right? And what do we end with? We end with a quotation mark. So what do we need at the beginning? We need a quotation mark. So one simple way to do this is to know that A is correct simply because it has the double quotes. If you look here, B has a single quote, but that doesn't work. A single quote in American academic English is a quote of a quote. You don't need to know that. But at the end here, it's a double quote, so it has to be consistent. Let's also talk about why the others are wrong. I mean, C and D we get rid of right away because there's no quotation at all. A versus B, as we've talked about before, they're kind of equivalent in terms of the colon or the single dash. But the single dash is kind of a wild card. We get rid of it unless there's a really good reason for us to choose it, such as the other 3 being wrong or there being only one other right one that is super not concise. So in this case, we like this because it matches the double quotes, and the colon here is okay because we have a independent clause before it, then we have a colon, and then we have what I'd call an explanation after it. It just so happens that the explanation is in the form of a quotation. 18 here is a transition question, and we can tell because we have different transitional words. Don't get thrown off, guys. Some of you might think that this is going to be a sentence structure question because you have however in the middle of a sentence and there's no semicolon here. Just remember that sometimes however can be in the middle of a sentence without a semicolon. If you check this out, this is only one independent clause. We have this deliberate decision, that's my subject. May be met with, that's my verb. This stuff here is like an infinitive phrase. It gives extra information about the subject. Don't worry about that. So there's no problem with the commas. Moreover, we don't really have a choice because none of the answers let us change the punctuation here. So this is just a transition question. So when we're doing a transition question, we need to go ahead and check out the relationship between the statement before and the statement after. And it's really key that you guys realize that doesn't mean the relationship between this and this, right? Rather, it means the relationship between the statement that was made here, right? Potentially this whole big sentence, or excuse me, this sentence here, right? And then the next sentence that happens here. So let's go ahead and let's check that out. So the one before says, you don't want to give up the drama of the story just to be technically correct. So this is just reaffirming that idea that filmmakers aren't slaves to history, right? They want to be historically accurate, but at the end of the day, they're trying to make a good film. This next sentence says, the deliberate decision to forego accuracy for cinematic effect may be met with public criticism. Okay, so this is kind of like a positive of forgetting about history just to have a good movie, and this is a negative, right? Public criticism. So this is a clear contrast. And the only answer choice we have here is A, that gives me a contrast. So the takeaway here is we look at the statement before and then the statement after, even when the transition happens in the middle of the sentence. Other takeaway is, notice this is not a sentence structure question. This is a transition question. We don't have any options for changing the sentence structure. Number 19 here, let's take a look. This is actually best understood, in my opinion, as a fragment question. Let's take a look. So if I read this whole sentence, we have a compound sentence. We have our first independent clause. Kushner responded by stating Lincoln upheld the expectations of a dramatic film because it illustrated the amendment's narrow vote, right? And then we have a comma and, which tells me new sentence. So let's take a look at this new independent clause. Doris Kearns Goodwin, that's going to be my subject, right? The film's historical consultant, that's like an A positive, a type of interrupter, right? But then we have this word defending, and the problem is defending is an ing word. And if you've worked with me for a while, as all of you have, you know that an ing word cannot be a verb on its own. So technically this is a verb, this is a sentence fragment. And if you just simplify it, right? Goodwin defending the script, right? That's kind of like the simplified version of the sentence. Is this a sentence? Goodwin defending the script? No way. But we can say Goodwin defended the script. Now we have a finite verb and it works perfectly. So this is a fragment. A is a fragment because of the ing. B is a fragment because we have the subordinator who in front of the verb. And D is a fragment because we have the infinitive form, which also is not a finite verb. Our only answer that works is C. Let's take a look at number 20. Which choice provides the most effective transition from the previous paragraph? Okay, so the previous paragraph is talking about kind of the public backlash that happens when there is a deviation from historical detail, right? They're talking about how some Connecticut congressman wrote a letter complaining that Connecticut history wasn't represented accurately. The next sentence is about Kate Williams, and she kind of gives this idea that it kind of reasserts. After we talk about how historical detail is important in the beginning, then we say that, they give one example, Master and Commander, where historical detail is important, but it's not everything. Sometimes you have to break the rules a little bit, break historical accuracy. Then we talk about the negative consequences of that. And now we're kind of concluding here where we're reasserting the importance of historical detail, right? Kate Williams says filmmakers have a great responsibility, and historical consultants need to make sure that filmmakers take this responsibility seriously. So how do we kind of transition back into reasserting this big idea that it's important for filmmakers to take historical accuracy seriously? So A says, why then is historical accuracy important in films? I'm going to keep it. I don't like love it. It's a weird rhetorical question, but as we're going to see, all of them are rhetorical questions, but at least it's on topic. It's talking about historical accuracy is important, right? B, what about directors who are less concerned about historical accuracy? I'm going to get rid of this. This would have been okay for a previous paragraph, but not for this concluding paragraph. Consequently, do movies that take place in the very recent past require historical consultants? This is a weird, new idea. In the very recent past, it's introducing this kind of finely discriminated point of view that seems irrelevant to the passage for me, so I'm going to get rid of C. D, what sources should they consult? This is like a weird detail. Again, guys, kind of a takeaway is that they don't use the word concluding here in the question, but this is the concluding paragraph of the passage, and when in doubt, we want to err on the side of main ideas. So A is going to be our best answer here. It speaks to historical accuracy being important. 21, let's take a look here. So this is a very simple question. Kate Williams is the subject, a British historian. This gives her title. This is not her title, but her role. This is in A positive, what I call an interrupter. Interrupters can be set off with either dashes or commas, but you can't mix and match. Because we have a comma here, we need to have a dash. We need to have a comma here, but it's a dash. So that means that A is going to be wrong. The best answer is going to be C. It puts this comma here. Finally, number 22. This is another kind of like vocab question, but it's actually like a homophone question. This is relatively rare, but it does happen. Like sometimes we see affect, which is a verb, versus effect, which is a noun, right? Studying hard will affect your results. That's a verb, right? The effect of studying hard will be positive on your SAT score. That's a noun, right? But here we see it with assure, ensure, insure. And then the other difference we have is the word that comes after it. So we kind of have two angles of attack we can take. So let's see. Historical consultants must assure filmmakers or ensure filmmakers. To assure kind of means like to give encouragement to, right? To say, don't worry, filmmakers, it'll all be all right. That's not the best fit here, right? It's not outlandish, but better is going to be B. To ensure means to make sure of, and that's exactly our meaning here. So I'm going to limit it to B and C. And then historical consultants must ensure that or must ensure for. B is going to be our best answer. Not only is it more idiomatic, but it also introduces this dependent clause that filmmakers take this responsibility seriously, right? That whole kind of clause becomes the thing that the consultants must ensure, which is why that is appropriate. Another little trick you can use here, guys, is let's say I'm totally not sure what to do here on test day. I notice that these two are the same, these two are different. This isn't going to work 100% of the time, but I kind of can eliminate A and D and bank on the fact that it's going to be one of these two ensures, and then it's a matter of choosing between these two, right? But hopefully we know these words, they're not that hard. Just remember, ensure means to make sure of. assure means to give encouragement, and then insure is like if you insure a boat or something in case of a storm. That's not going to work at all. Anyway, I'll come back with a review of the third passage a little bit later. Thank you. Keep studying hard. Reach out with questions.